What up, guys? Another Adonis review, and today we'll be doing the new PlayStation VR 2 game, Horizon Call of the Mountain, and I'll discuss a little bit about the VR 2 as well, in case you've never, what your thoughts are on that as well. So let's get into it. So first, just in general, to go over the VR 2, it is a very nice addition and boost. Not as much of a boost as I thought it would be. With a initial VR, you can have PlayStation 2 level of graphics, and they can still be a pretty riveting game. As I've always said before, it's always hard to tell how good a game looks on YouTube when you're playing VR, because it's just 100% different when you're actually in there in virtual reality than comparing it when you're watching it with the PS2 level of graphics. So, with PS2 level of graphics for the VR game, when you put it into VR, it can push it up to PS3 or PS4 in your mind. I mean, it doesn't look amazing, but it makes, it really kind of boosts it and how cool it is. It makes you able to enjoy it even with those lower graphics. So with, finally having games that are now at PS5 level of graphics for VR, and with an OLED screen, I did kind of have higher hopes that it would be like, I don't know, watching a PS8 or something, just something that I've never really fathomed. Unfortunately, it does not really hit that mark. If anyone's ever played Resident Evil 7 in VR, that's one of the top tier games graphically that I've seen in VR. Unfortunately, I haven't tried Half-Life Alyx yet. Hopefully they put that in to the VR 2 one day. But it looks good. The Resident Evil 7 looks actually pretty good. It's just, the headset screen isn't as good as an OLED. So unfortunately it doesn't have those enhancements. But you can tell that it still kind of shows those graphics. With this, they now have a screen that can play it well and clear. So it still looks good. And it can play it, but it doesn't do anything more than they have a higher expectance than I thought it would be. But it's still cool to have, just in general. The VR2 is a nice thing. It's cool that they added the cameras on the headset, so you don't need the eye controller camera thing or anymore. It's also cool because a lot of the games haven't adapted over for the PlayStation VR to the VR2, which is a bummer. But the way they set it up, since you just need a Universal C adapter to play it, I literally have both the VR and the VR2 connected to my PlayStation 5, and literally could just switch between two without having to do anything. I just turn it on and put on whatever headset I want to do to play whatever game, which is nice. It's very convenient, so it's not like I have to take off wires for each one and switch between them two. That's pretty cool. So anyway, let's go into the game now. Horizon Call of the Mountain. Kind of quickly go into, I guess, what you should expect from the story of the game. You are what's called a Shadow Karja, which, what can I say about that? In Horizon, those are the black armor that you'll get for Aloy in the game. It's one of the cooler armors, in my opinion, and that's about as much as I know about that clan. Sorry, I didn't do research on, their fucking story. Horizon's story always has not been, something I dig deep in the back lore of, unfortunately. But going past that, so you're this tribesman from that clan, and essentially your job is to climb 1,000 mountains until you're able to stop another tribe. So let's kind of get into the positives and negatives of it all. So positives, quite clearly, graphically wise, this is a PS5 level game. Horizon Call of the Mountain and Horizon Forbidden West, it's probably one of the most PS5 games I've played so far when it comes to, PS5 and next-gen games. It's a beautifully stunning game graphically. The environment, the world is very vast, and the graphics look amazing the whole way. So I was pretty excited to see this be adapted because, not only is the world beautiful, not only do we now have an OLED screen and we're going to see the virtual reality, but these machines are also something pretty incredible to see just typically in the game. So seeing it in live, definitely something pretty impressive. But again, doesn't fully hit the grand scale that I was hoping, that of something that maybe I've never seen before in my life. Yeah, I was hoping that it'd be like a new level of the world, like we've done it. But instead it's just, what I felt like it always could be. Like I said, Resident Evil 7 has these graphics, and they were able to put it on, in the original VR. We just need developers to really work on it, unfortunately. But irregardless, the graphics look amazing in this game. Truly is, like I said, PSVR game, PSVR 2 game, PS5 graphic, cool game in VR, so that's great. Another fantastic thing is I think they really did a great job on the controller and mechanics of it. There's not a lot of well-adapted use of making a very seamless transition when it comes to using controllers in games. Probably the best example I've seen of using it well is maybe Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, where they've really thought out the controls and to make it really work with a VR, and the dual sense controllers or whatever, Move or whatever you want to call it, rather than it being kind of a secondary thought and really it being better used for like the regular controller or whatever. This has been fully thought out. The way that you can twist your arm one way and look at all your arrows, and then do one thing, and then you're able to kind of build your arrows yourself and piece them together piece by piece. You're able to connect things. There's really a fine detail of what you can pick up, small things, and the way you can connect it. It's really well done. It also has the way that you can switch weapons, pull them, whip them out from one side to another, pull back the arrow, the resistance they put into the triggers so that you can feel the strength of it. Like I said, it makes you feel like you're holding that bow, and that it does it. And I'm a big fan of Skyrim VR, which I think is probably one of the best VR games in existence. Honestly, it's incredible that they got this, 200-hour, 300-hour game and was able to put it all in and adapt everything in it for VR, which also has a bow and arrow mechanic that I feel like they did pretty well. The only thing I'd say I dislike about the bow and arrow mechanic at this one is there's not like any, at least, maybe they might have in the settings, but they don't have like a crosshair thing, which, once you get kind of used to the bow, you don't really need. I can pretty much aim it and know what I'm going to shoot and hit it, and it goes exactly where I think I'm going to shoot it. But I think for the beginning of it would be nice. I mean, it doesn't even have to be big. It could be some, just tiny crosshairs somewhere would have been nice in the beginning of the game. But I digress. It's not that big of a deal. But like I said, kind of recapping on the positives, graphically it looks great. The controllers are great, and the way they decided to make it work. And also just small little things you get to do. Like you can see in this fight battle, they have these type of, I don't know what you want to call them, like machines or kind of like a building that allows you to kind of, you essentially grab the lever and it'll take you up to this big giant ballista type bow and arrow thing that you see there. And then you can, wind up the arrow and shoot it at the dinosaur as you aim it out, which is kind of a small thing, but, it kind of gives you that extra immersion, how you wind it up, you pull the lever, all that fun stuff, something that they didn't really have to do, but they did, and works well. Now let's go over the negatives of the game. Now the negatives aren't by any means deal breakers. I think this is a game that everyone should play, and it is fantastic. But there are little things that kind of upset me, and I'll try to go from kind of like the biggest things to like, my nitpicky things, which I have a few of. A lot of them are more nitpicky. First off, in my opinion, the story's pretty mundane and basically not even really worth listening to or watching. Honestly, you could probably have it off the whole time and just be listening to a podcast, and you wouldn't probably miss too much. It's just not really built for a story. I've never been too entertained by the Horizon story. Number 2 was definitely more interesting, but I've always felt there to be the characters could be kind of generic, like basically just like bland, boring NPCs that say generic lines and shit. Like, and this doesn't really break away from that. There's nothing really interesting or unique or diversive about your character. He's just a warrior-oriented guy that, gets shit done. That's the end of it. So the story could have been a little bit more exciting. I've seen reviews with people complaining, saying this is like a tech demo of the PSVR 2. I think it's pretty well done, but I can kind of see how that can be seen. And I think the biggest reason is because another negative of this game, I could say, is that it's truly 85% climbing. It's called Call of the Mountain because you're climbing mountains the whole fucking game. That's it. And again, it's still pretty cool the way that that you can climb it and whatnot. It's pretty well done, but it is excessive, which would be fine if they add a few more fight scenes. But essentially, this game I would say is about 10 hours long, give or take. There's probably like 10 main missions, maybe 12. Each one taking possibly 45 minutes. And essentially, the whole game breaks down to you climbing a mountain, then walking and then climbing a mountain again. And then eventually you get to an area basically like you see now, like an arena-shaped area. And then when you get to this arena-shaped area, it then switches mechanics of how you play. And you go into this where you essentially can't walk anymore. And you just do side dashes left or right as you fight whatever it is. So you're basically always kind of circling whatever you're fighting. And then just, attacking them like that until they're defeated. And then once you defeat them, you go back to your normal way of walking and whatnot and climbing. Which is kind of like, eventually you kind of get used to it, but it's kind of annoying, especially sometimes where you might see an enemy that maybe they don't want you to fight, and so you don't switch into that fighting mechanic. But, for some reason, I don't know, it's just weird, like when you see an enemy that you can fight, but you're not in that mechanic. It's like, am I supposed to fight them then? Like, why did I even go into this? Like I said, it's not a big deal, but the bigger deal is the fact that it happens so rarely. There's, it's just, they really could have added. Like I said, right now it's probably like 85% mountain climbing, 15%, getting somewhere and then fighting a monster, then climbing again. I don't know. I think it should be like 65%, 35% difference. They definitely could have added more, maybe small battles here and there, rather than just being like almost like final bosses at the end of a mission. It just wasn't divided well. That doesn't make the game less fun at all. It just kind of is a missed opportunity of a better way they could have handled it. Now I'll kind of go into more nitpicky things. My first nitpicky thing would probably be the way that you walk in this. In any other VR game, it's simple. Any game in general, right? You basically push the direction you want to walk with the joystick or the L3, R3, and you walk that way. If it's not broke, don't fix it. That's not how this game is. I guess they really wanted you to fucking be diversive in the way that you move, so they decided to add extra steps in the movie. But in this one, you basically have to press two buttons and they kind of like sweep your arms back and forth to walk, which, I don't know, it's just stupid. It's like not that difficult or that big of a deal, but it's like, you play any other game, you'll forget when you come back to it and you'll be like, oh yeah, I gotta like do this and swing my arms. And it's kind of slow. Like, I don't know if you can swing, you can't really swing faster and make it work faster or anything, I don't think. So, I don't know, it just feels pointless. I don't really know why they did it. I just feel like it was a pointless thing to add in and doesn't make the game better. Truly not needed. So that's kind of my first nitpick. Another nitpick I'd say is probably the also the dashing, the way that you switch those mechanics. Just again, it's like you kind of do a sweep to push left and right. I don't feel like that was truly needed. Also, another nitpick that I see is probably a bigger nitpick is the weaponry. You get mainly two main weapons, which is like a bow and like a slingshot, which are the main things you'll use. And you do get different versions of the slingshot, of like the ammo for it, like electric arrows and fire arrows and whatnot that you can build. But they give you like 6 other weapons that eventually you build and piece together, which is kind of cool. But like they all aren't used for fighting, and they are used far and in between. And the worst example of this would be like this kind of like giant mechanical ninja star thing that you build eventually. And when you first make it, it's pretty sick. Like, you look at something and you can chuck it and it spins like a blade and it looks awesome. Like it's fun to use. The negative here is that you essentially never use it. The main point of this, and the only reason you use this, is to cut ropes. And you basically make it, and then get like 2 ropes to cut when you first make it, and then like it never really is used that much then on after. And I feel like that weapon would be an awesome weapon to use in a battle as a third weapon, especially since you can make it like add fire to it or electricity or ice or something, and then chuck this like ninja star shit at them. This giant ninja star blade you made, like it'd be a fun weapon. Like I enjoy throwing it. It's just lame because one, I don't really ever, you can't throw it at enemies, which would be the funnest. But there's not even past that point. The thing it's meant to be thrown at, you never get to throw it out anyways. So it's just a missed opportunity, and that goes for most things that you kind of build. Like it feels like they make it so that you could just use it later on, and then one or two times right after you make it, and then you never use it again. So I just feel like why they should have just made less things on the wheel, and just the things that you do use, you use a lot. Because like the things you do make, they are fun and cool to use, and it does feel like you're using them. It's like well implemented. But a lot of them just seem pointless, and like I said, that ninja sword is a big miss for me. I really wish I'd have to throw that at enemies and whatnot. It's a bummer. But like I said, it's a minor thing. It's not going to ruin the game for you at all. It's just something that, just bums me out, I guess. Overall, like I said, this is a great game, a game that I think everyone should buy, play. It's beautiful, looks amazing. The water looks stunning, the way it handles as well. Like I said, the story's boring and mundane, and, a lot of it's climbing sometimes. But what is done right, and what is boring or maybe done too much doesn't make it bad at all. It's still a fantastic game overall, 100%. So I think it's worth getting, worth playing. I'd probably, if you're going to play, you're going to pay top dollar right now for it. And there's not much on the PSP 2, unfortunately, to hold your interest beyond this. And like Resident Evil 8 and Gran Turismo 7. So if you're going to have a PSVR 2, you might as well play this on it. It is, but if you end up seeing this later in the future, I'd say maybe $40. It's probably what this game's worth. $35 would be pretty fair. So, hope that helps. Sorry this went on too long. I had a lot of thoughts about it that might be not that important. But that's my overall thoughts. If you got a VR2, go get it. Thanks, guys.